All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers. Now, I got a question for you guys. What happens when a man loses 18 years to incarceration and still finds a way to come home with enough clarity, discipline, and purpose to rebuild not just his own life, but create pathways for some other people to do the same? Well, that's the conversation that we're going to have today because too often people hear justice impacted and reduce a human being to a charge or sentence or a number. They hear words like formerly incarcerated and think the story starts at conviction and ends at release. But anybody who has lived this knows that it's not how the story works. Prison is not the whole story. It's just one chapter, guys. Sometimes the longest one, sometimes the hardest one, but nevertheless, it's only one. And today's guest understands that better than most. I want to introduce to you guys Anthony Brown, a writer, restorative justice advocate, a peer specialist, success coach. I mean, the man got so many hats, bro. And his story kind of stretches from New York, North Carolina, federal compounds to Atlanta neighborhoods. And after serving, he was able to come home in January of 21 and did what a lot of people talk about, but what few actually do. He got to work. Without any further ado, guys, let's get into the conviction fiction. All right, welcome back to the show, man. Anthony Brown, what's going on, my brother?
Hey, man, everything is good, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me to join your platform. Thank you for just having me on, man. So everything is good,
no
man.
problem.
No
You know
complaints.
what? I was reading your story, doing the bio thing and doing my research. What I appreciate about your story the most is that it mirrors something that I know personally, and that's the real work does not start when the sentence begins, but the real work starts when you finally get honest about who you were before it all fell apart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It absolutely is an inside job, bro. In 2020, in 2001, I was sentenced to 235 months in federal prison. And that was running concurrent with my New York State sentence. And as a young man entering the prison system, I had a lot of excuses for why I was there. I didn't want to take accountability. So, it absolutely started. The transformation started when I started having honest conversations with myself, about the decisions that I was making, about the excuses that I was making, and, about the lack of accountability and direction that I had in my own life. So I
Right.
had to get honest with, and those are difficult conversations to have, brother. When
Yep.
you're talking to yourself and, and you in, those cells so far away from home, so far removed from everything that you want to blame. It was natural to lash out and want to blame either the system, my adopted mother, my biological mother, but plenty of the weight had to stop with me. You know what I'm saying? That's when I started learning about what being a man really was, because I had to become accountable for the poor decisions that I was making.
Oh man, and that's what today's conversation is just not about incarceration. It's a conversation about, like you said, identity, about
Yeah.
accountability, about discipline. And that's what we're gonna get into today, man. Again, I want to thank you again for joining. Uh, I guess before we talk about the years and the institutions, the work, or even the redemption arc, people love to romanticize after the fact.
Sure.
I
Sure.
always think it's important to begin before the system ever assigns you a number, right? That's where it starts. That's that conversation. Because one thing I had to learn in my own life is that prison may have documented my collapse, my fall, but it did not invent it. By the time the
Absolutely.
sentence came, a lot of the internal damage had already been done for me. The confusion was already there, the lack of discipline, all that stuff you just talked about. The ego was already there. And prison did not create the fracture, it just exposed the fracture. And what I
Absolutely.
want to ask you today is that before we start the conversation, it's like long before the courtroom, right? That's where I want to start. Who was Anthony Brown before incarceration?
Here we go. Anthony Brown, I'm a product of the child welfare system. I'm system impacted through and through. You know, I'm triple system impacted from the foster care system to the school to prison pipeline. So Anthony Brown before prison was uh, an adopted child. I never knew my biological parents. I never knew my biological family whatsoever. I was born in North Carolina. I was eventually adopted into a military family. That military family traveled from Germany all the way to Georgia, Ohio, Kentucky, you know, many states in between. So I came up with this adopted family, and what happened early on in my life was I learned about shame and secrets. Um, yeah, shame and secrets early on in the household. I came from the generation of what goes on in this household stays in this household.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I carry a lot of secrets um from early adolescent all the way to probably like the end of middle school, right? Carrying these secrets, what was going on in the household, uh me feeling in
So
that I
when
was
you look
never
back now,
athletic.
though, yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
not to cut you off, but when you look back now, what was already broken in your thinking long before prison ever made it visible? Because, like you said, there were some things that went on in the house that you
Sure,
just internalize it. You know what I'm saying? I
sure,
grew up in a similar situation where my stepdad, like, hey, don't nobody should know your business. Whatever going on in this house, bro, like we handling it here. We gonna deal with it. And then it was all under the guys. That's what family does. That's what we supposed
sure,
to do. Supposed to handle it.
sure.
So with that, what do you think was already broken long before prison ever made it visible?
I never had a sense of I never had a sense of love. That's what was broken. A natural bond between a son and a mother. I never had that. I never had that. I never had just feeling like somebody really had my back. I never really had that. So I'm going through life with a sense of abandonment. I'm going through life with like an imposter syndrome because I'm living in a military family. We're living in a family home in a decent neighborhood, but I'm not being emotionally taken care of.
Right.
I'm not being really reared right with principles as a man because the man had left the household, the father had left the household. So I was being raised in a household with two sisters and a mother that weren't my sisters or my mother, right? They was my adopted family, and they treated me as much, right?
Right. Like the
I
real
knew that.
Cinderella story.
There you go. Right. It wasn't like little Orphan Annie, it was like little Orphan Anthony,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Because I wasn't given a lot of emotional protection. I wasn't given a lot of I just wasn't given a lot of support. And so early on, I started looking outside the house. I started looking outside the community for help and for support, right? And for identity because I started gravitating towards, hey man, that Jay is so crazy. He'll do this. He is, he'll mouth off at the teachers, right? He has no respect. So once I was getting celebrated, for all my antisocial behaviorisms, it
Mhm.
just took off from there. It took off
Man,
from
and
there.
I ask that because for a lot of us, especially men, who come from instability, I know you work with the Black Male Initiative also, right? But when men come from instability, survival starts masquerading as identity real early. You start confusing like defense mechanisms for your true personality. And, you know, for me, it's confusing pain for toughness, right? If
Mhm.
whenever I got hurt, it's like, oh, you got to be tough. You know what I mean? You hurt yourself, you ain't going to no doctor. You better go lay down, or something might have a concussion or anything, right? And you start
Tough it out.
confusing that emotional detachment for strength. And this is what happened in my life. There were things I called instinct that were really just unresolved trauma with better branding on it. So let me
Absolutely.
ask you this: how much of who you were back then was actually you, and how much of it was just basically adapting?
Oh man, back then I would say, man, probably man, uh,
50,
over 50
40.
percent, over
Yeah.
over 50%. I knew right from wrong. I knew honesty from lies, right?
Mhm.
So with me catering to the crowd that was celebrating, right, all the foolishness that I was doing, I definitely was acting other than self. So I
Yeah.
would say over 50% was
Now
me
looking
acting other
back, can
than,
you see the difference? I know you probably can see the difference clearly because
for
that
sure.
distinction matters.
Always had an affinity for language arts. I've always loved reading. I've always loved that, right? But I
Mhm.
shied away from that. And I'm talking about this early on. I can remember back in first grade, my first grade teacher, Miss Shockey, making us learn 10 words a week. 10
Mm.
words a week.
Right.
And I prided myself when every time she would ask me a word and I would know the word. But
Right.
as I got older, I started to shy away from that. Now I did come back to that in prison. Obviously, when I started writing, I wrote books, I wrote screenplays, I wrote lawsuits, a plethora of things.
A lot of us were performing manhood long before we understood what responsibility really means, man. We knew how to project control before we knew how to practice that discipline. Now, I knew how to command space before I even know how to govern my own self.
Mm,
So what's important is that we had to learn the hard way, right? That's we talked about the O, right? A lot of what we thought was confidence was just emotional avoidance, just dressed up. So we talked about before the system ever confining you. If you were anything, what did you think you were trying to prove something, or were you chasing something like that? Love. I think you mentioned love.
yeah, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to, yeah, I did wanted to be loved. Um, there was a lot of neglect for me growing up, right? I wasn't getting uh clothes like I thought I should have got, right? I wasn't getting the attention that I should have got. And so that led me to having secret larceny with my friends. So it would take
Man,
me a long term later to learn that no material, no money, even some relationships is going to feel the inadequacy in myself until I start to deal with it.
I get you, bro. Because like you talk about the video games. I can remember in this. I was a youngster, bro. I couldn't have been no more than about 10, 11 years old. I was doing kick those, bro, like
Mm.
crazy. Like, here's the thing: like, we had neighbors in our neighborhood that had video games. They were kind of, I ain't gonna say they were fluent, but they had stuff, and we ain't had it like that. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
if I go there and play with them, I go home feeling, oh man, like, dang, man, they got it made over there, boom, boom, boom. And one day they left, bro. I think the folks went to work or might have skipped school or stuff, whatever. I was at home, wasn't nobody at home. How about I go over there and gather my brother? And hey, we went in there and got those video games and
yeah,
played them
yeah,
like
yeah,
it was no tomorrow. Now the police came over. I guess they called the police because I mean, wasn't nothing missing but video games, bro.
yeah, yeah. So they know
But
some
we done
kids did. Yeah,
destroyed the door and everything, right? So we in there playing video games. We see the police outside. Well, we already know what's gonna happen, so we better go and get this last game in, bro. Like, cause we about to go. We about to take a little ride.
go.
And there's a moment when every justice impacted person understands that sometimes it's hard to explain to people our lives, especially if they never lived it. It's that moment
Sure.
when all the noise disappears. The courtroom is over, new movement slows down, and the call stops. And suddenly it's just you, your choices, and the silence. So with that being said, and Anthony, if you know, for the first time, a lot of us are left in a room long enough, right? I don't know that, I guess, kumbaya moment. And for some people,
Uh-huh.
it is more terrifying than the sentences to itself. So let's go back to that moment. When the sentence became real, what hit you first?
I've never seen so much blood. I never heard another man just cry so loud.
Right,
That let me know where I was. I was in a foreign territory.
right.
I was in foreign territory, but it left an indelible impression on me to watch my words, watch what I'm doing, my behaviors and my actions. Day one, right? And I didn't want to suffer any of those. So thank God I made it through 10 years of New York State incarceration, not a scratch on me. Made it through 7 years of the federal prison system, but I was learning a lot. I matured. I became a man in prison. That's where I became a man at.
Yeah, yeah. And most of us, I have a similar story to that where, you know, I saw somebody, he was just walking across the yard. He had an ice pick stuck in him, just bleeding profuse. I'm like, God damn it, bro. You know, I'm like, damn, you know. And it's inside, eventually
It
the
makes a
noise
difference. Yeah.
dies and it all becomes like commonplace. Like you just don't do certain stuff, right? Get into that survival mode. And that was one of the
You
hardest
get into
things
the
I had to
survival.
face is that like I have adapted to this. It wasn't more so like, oh man, that man got shanked. It's more so, oh man, they finna lock down the yard. You know what I'm saying? They about to lock down the yard. They doing that stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this:
Yeah.
what did what did what part of yourself showed up during that bid that you had spent years avoiding?
Uh, my emotional side, bro. My
Yeah,
emotional side. Like I never like I came up with a generation that, you know, men don't cry. Men not supposed to cry. You know, that's soft. Men are not supposed to be speaking about their emotions. Like I was able to start confiding in other human beings, not just the men on the compound, but even staff, right? Therapeutic staff, vocational staff, the ones that was there, that was receptive to our humanity,
right.
right? That understood that we were human beings. A lot of us made bad decisions. I don't like to say mistakes, right? I didn't make no mistakes. When I was robbing banks and committing crimes, I was very intentional. I wanted to get away with every single one of them. I wasn't making mistakes. I was making poor choices. I was making bad decisions. I was making mistakes.
Yeah,
That was my
I
whole
tell
decision
people
for
that
instance.
all the time, bro. Like prison teaches, bro. It does teach. Now, whether it teaches wisdom or deeper dysfunction, it depends entirely on what you trying to confront.
On the
Because
student.
prison will sharpen whatever you feed it. It can sharpen manipulation, it can sharpen violence, it can sharpen resentment. But if a man is honest enough, it can also sharpen observation, discipline, patience, empathy, self-awareness. Now that was one of the hardest lessons in my journey. Prison didn't automatically make me better. It gave me time, right? What I became with that time was my responsibility. So when you look at 18 years, you know, what it taught you about humanity, it taught you about people, and what did it teach you about yourself that freedom never could have taught you?
Uh that every day is every day is a gift, yo. Every day
Yeah,
is a gift. It taught me gratitude, brother.
mhm,
I was in a group, I was in a program called the Challenge Program. It's a cognitive behavior program. You're in a housing unit, and we are dressed in our uniforms. There's no wearing your sweatsuits. There's no wearing you wearing business like it's business hours. So we got our
yeah,
shirts tucked in, and we have morning meetings. When you pull up somebody for offending community standards or community
yeah,
rules, right?
yeah,
We wasn't calling our housing unit a cell block. We was calling a community. I'm working the system. I'm Mr. Brown. So one more I get pulled up. It's the first time I get pulled up. I like to pull up. Another brother pulled me, a community member pulled me up. That kind of exposed that I didn't have it together and that I was still dealing with some certain aspects of like criminal thinking, right?
yeah,
Being deceptive, right? So I learned from then on, like, you know what? I'm just gonna do the right thing, bro. I'm gonna strive to do the right thing, right? Um, and it was a process. It was a
mhm,
process, right? I had to be very intentional about it.
yeah,
Um, just not being so impulsive.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where the process really started taking root. Was that it's not just my words, right? It's not just my words, but it is my actions. And then I learned that people are watching. You know what I'm saying? People are watching. And not that I want to do anything for performance purposes, because I just want to be the example, right? Because I've seen other examples before me. I seen brothers that was doing time, whether it was Mandela or Malcolm, or whether it was the brother that I'm seeing around me, that they're taking a terrible, horrible situation, incarceration, away from your family, but they're moving with principle and they're moving with honor.
Yeah.
They're blooming where they're planted. They may have been planted within a penitentiary with untold amounts of time, but they're still being a beneficial presence where they're at, right? A brother that first took me under the wing had 3 life sentences. He had 3 life sentences. I'm 21, like I'm 24. He had 3 life sentences, but he took a liking to me, like, yo, listen, man, you're not gonna be all up in that TV room. You're not gonna be all up in this bullshit, right? This how you talking to me. You gonna be reading, you gonna what? You telling me, yeah, I'm telling you what to do because I don't want to see you end up like me. You got way more potential, right? You got way. He seen this like early on in my bed.
Yeah.
So I had the benefit of being around, men that was exhibiting good character despite their situation,
Right.
despite their history. I'm talking about, you look on paper, it might say some real heinous shit. But what I'm seeing day to day, the integrity of the men, the honesty of the men, the discipline of the men, I just had it made indelible impressions on me. For
Man,
sure.
that's one thing I respect about your stories, that you did not come home like chasing the applause either. You came home building an infrastructure, just building off of those lessons that you learned and around the people. I mean, if you get all of us in the room that have been incarcerated and are kind of in this reentry space and this changing the narrative space, all of us have the stories are so similar when it comes down to it, bro. It's always somebody that looked out for you, wasn't on no bullshit, was just straight up with you, bro.
Exactly.
And just saying, like, look, man, this is what it's gonna be, man. You got a chance, right? I might not have one, but you do. And that somehow I believe it helps help them with their redemption story. It helps them saying, like, okay, yeah, I messed up, but I'm going to teach somebody and help them. And I think that's what we try to do now. You know what I mean?
That's what we're doing.
Yep.
That's exactly
and I relate
what
to
we're
that
doing.
deeply because I learned real quick, bro, that reentry will expose whether your transformation is just performance or are you actually practicing it? Because everybody says they want a second chance. Fewer people are ready for the discipline required to build that second chance. And I had to learn that in real time, bro. It's one thing to say you changed. It's another thing to become useful, right? You can say you changed all day.
I never heard that. It's another thing to become useful.
Yeah. It's another thing to become useful. You can say you changed all day. To become consistent, you got to build something other people can stand on. And that's what stands out in your story. So let me ask you, when you came home, what did you know you needed to build first? What was the first thing you needed to build?
The first thing I needed to build, bro, was my sense of belief in myself, bro. I'm gonna be honest with you. I needed to believe in myself that I could come out here and when shit was going left, could I stay going right? It did go left. I've been homeless. I was bouncing between different relationships to the point where my probation officer said, you know what? You're not going to this address. You're going to the halfway house. I went to, after I did 9 months in a halfway house, my probation officer said, you're not going to, you know what, AB, I let you say, this relationship didn't work. I'm going to go to this relationship. You know what? This relationship didn't work. I'm about to go over here with this. No, you're going to the halfway house. So that's 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. So it showed me that I had the capacity to tighten up when I needed to tighten up without resorting to any criminality. Right? I went to Georgia Works, and I got a dear friend. Unfortunately, he's fighting a case right now. He's back incarcerated. I met him in prison. Unfortunately, he's back incarcerated, fighting a serious case. But he offered me a means to make money while I was in Georgia Works. I love the fact of why I rejected the offer. I didn't reject the offer because I was just so scared to go to jail. Like, man, I want to go to jail. I don't ever want to get back incarcerated. But my rationale was that I'm in Georgia Works because my probation officer got me in here. But it's a lot of men in here sleeping because they suffer from serious diseases, drug addiction, right? They're at the bottom of their bottom. right? Sometimes this might be the last opportunity. I'm not going to go in good conscience and exploit that for $1. I'm
Right.
not.
There you
I
go.
sit in there, I do the Georgia Works program, and at that time they was paying us $7 an hour. This is in 2023, but they was offering us room and board in an old jail. If you know about Georgia Works was located in the jail before pre-trial was built, right?
Yeah.
Right on Prior Street, where all the unhoused people be out there, and it looks so sad, a lot of human suffering. That's where the Georgia Works building was.
Mm.
And so even in that stage of my reentry, I still didn't take the opportunity to make a fast buck, an easy buck, a criminal buck on principle purposes.
Great.
Know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could say what mattered the most in those early days, was it stability? Was it purpose, or maybe structure? What was the most important thing in those early days?
The most important thing in the early days of my release was definitely structure.
Yeah.
Was definitely structure. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Without
I
question,
know
brother.
for me, that's one of the things that, when you got the pull-up system, you got people looking out for each other. That's the structure. So but you get out here, you know what I'm saying? You have to impose your own
There you
structure
go.
on your
There you
life,
go.
bro. Now you moved into service quickly. You got in after those setbacks and you came back up. You got into restorative justice, peer
I
support,
did. I
success
did.
coaching, community work, voter engagement. I met you first time I met you. We were at BMI over there by Old Allen Temple. You was at the center over there. I was like, okay, I got to get with this. I think a Congress, somebody was running for office. They was up in there and everything.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that told me you understood something early on that a lot of people miss. Survival means very little if it only serves you. It only
Absolutely.
serves you, bro. So I had to learn that too. Freedom gets heavier when you realize that it's just not about staying out of prison. It's about becoming somebody your freedom can benefit from. So let me
Absolutely.
ask you this. This is my next question. I know I'm hitting you with questions left and right, but I prepared for this, bro.
I love it, bro.
All right,
I
what was
love it
service? Why was service? Why was service such an immediate part of your reentry with the restorative justice and the peer counseling and stuff?
because at the heart of restorative, at the heart of restoration is service. Is service in me because restorative justice, is basically it's a philosophy, it's a social movement, that's based in just restorative. Is ancient as the original people inhabitants of this land, right?
Mhm.
They took it. They had restorative, man. They didn't have county jails and prisons and all that. They took it to the community, right?
Mhm.
So in order for me to address the harms that I've done to the community, there was no other way that I could come out than to be a community servant. There was no other way for me to repair the harm that I've done, right? I sold drugs on Moreland Avenue. I sold drugs on Fulton Industrial Boulevard. I sold drugs in Boat Rock Apartments, Herndon Homes. I've robbed businesses on Kennedy Street, Lee Street. I robbed 4 banks, even though they was insured, but I offended society. I contributed to the destruction and demise and the addiction of our people. I wasn't selling it outside of our neighborhoods. Everybody that I sold drugs to looked like us, brother.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, yes, I'm repentant and I pray to Almighty Father that I'm forgiven for my sins. But as I got breath in my body, if I'm going to be an advocate of restoration, I need to serve the community. And my very first occupation, my very first experience with nonprofit and service work was with Integrity Transformations Community Development Corporation off of Donald Lee Hollowell Boulevard, Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway with Reverend Beckham. I was 6 months out of prison and I was just trying to get out the halfway house. I was putting in passes to get out any type of way. And they had a Zoom, mind you, I got out during COVID. So they had a hybrid class, whether you could take it in person or you could do it on the Zoom. I didn't know anything about Zoom. I said, I want to do it in person.
Right.
So I was the only person in person for 6 days at Integrity, right? So the staff was able to get to know me. I was able to get to know the staff, and I met Reverend Beckham. And the day that I graduated the West Side Net program, I asked him for a job,
Yeah.
and he gave me an opportunity.
Awesome.
And the opportunity was just providing free lawn care service to senior citizens of Vine City and English Avenue, that area. So that's how
Yeah.
I got my start serving the community. Yep.
That's crazy, bro. That's amazing because that's my old stomping ground. Old Bankhead, Hollowell. That's where I kind of grew up at. Over
Okay,
that way.
yeah, that's out Grove Park. I was over there in
Yeah.
Grove Park. I made relationships that I got to this day. Miss Dot, I used to cut her grass, right? Every day, every time I see her ride through there, to this day, I can stop by Miss Dot house. So I was able to, build these relationships, and that's what I love the most, brother.
Yeah.
I love talking with our people. I meet so many people. I met people that went to school with Dr. Martin, went to high school with Dr. Martin Luther King. I met people, who's had parents and they suffered long-term incarceration and they just want to connect with their parents and they come to me. Right.
Yeah.
I have so many conversations with people, and that's what I love most, my brother, just being a servant in the community.
That's what's up, bro. And then there's the writing, right? Then there's the writing. Now
Yeah.
that kind of resonates with me too, because writing became one of my first honest mirrors that I had, right? It kind of strips away performance. Writing forces structure. You got to sit there, you got to be with your thoughts. It makes you tell the truth long enough to hear it. So for you, what did writing give you that survival never could?
That's a good question. What did writing give me that survival could? Writing gave me a sense of control, homie. Writing gave me a sense of I'm going to control my destiny. I'm going to Razorwire Love. This is my book right here. Razorwire Love. Wrote it while I was in prison. This is actually the last hardback copy. But this is the first thing that I ever completed from start to finish. I never did that before in my life. So writing also gave me a sense of accomplishment. My very first sense of accomplishment. I was never athletic, so I wasn't the guy that was winning the trophies. Never had a medal. I came second in the spelling bee, so I never got even the spelling bee ribbon. So I never really got celebrated.
Yeah.
I never really got praised, right? Growing up, I didn't know what that felt like. It was foreign to me.
Yeah.
So
and I appreciate it,
right
bro.
now,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's still just foreign to me. So that's what writing gave me. Writing gave me a sense of power and a sense of completion, a sense of accomplishment.
That's what's up. And I appreciate another thing I appreciated just hearing your story, even in this conversation, is that your work, you didn't stop at personal transformation. You moved into narrative transformation, right? You got the books out. You're doing movies. And that matters because I said this for years. Policy follows story, bro. If the public opinion will listen to the story, they will change policy. Stigma follows story. If the only stories told about people like us are failure, violence, dysfunction, then society will build systems that respond to us like liabilities instead of human beings.
Absolutely,
that's why this
Antoine.
work matters, bro. It's not about just content. It's correction. It's about changing the narrative. That's why I created this platform myself. I'm working on another book, bro. That I've written 2 since I've been home. I got home in 2012, bro.
Okay.
I was staying with my parents over on Bankhead, staying in my parents, and I'm up in that house, bro. And I'm like, they older. So I'm like, bro, I'm tiptoeing around here. I'm damn near 40 years old and shit. You know what I'm saying? Getting like in a house that I grew up in that seems so much smaller now. You know what I'm saying? It was so much smaller. And just being in that environment, it made me move to find some type of success. Now, why was it important for you to move beyond personal success and into the public storytelling realm?
It was important, like you say about changing the narrative, bro. It's about changing the narrative. I know the power. I know the power of a story, right? I know the power. Like I was just telling a young man, a 12-year-old, about Frederick Douglass. He never heard of Frederick Douglass. Never heard of him.
Where's that young man, bro? I went to Frederick Douglass High School in Atlanta, over on the west side.
One of my first times I kind of like looked at my daughter, gave my daughter the side eyes when she was going to Frederick Douglass. And I asked her, "What you know about Frederick Douglass?" And she said
Yeah.
he was a slave. I
Right.
was
He
so
was,
disappointed. I was so
man.
disappointed. And I love my baby girl. I was
Mhm.
so disappointed, right? But
Yeah.
I was able to tell this young brother the story of the strength and the
Mhm.
intelligence and the you know the long lasting legacy. We here it is 200 years later. We still talking about Frederick Douglass, right? The
Right.
most
Right.
photographed man of his era, right?
Right.
He wrote 3 or 4 autobiographies, right? He was right before either one of us put these out, right? He
Right.
was right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, so
Exactly.
so I'm able to just regale this young man of stories of strength, like I said, of Frederick Douglass, and it just lit his eyes up.
Mm.
Even when I had to compare, like, you do know who Abraham Lincoln is? Yeah, I know who Abraham Lincoln is. I said he was an advisor to Abraham Lincoln,
Right. Right. One of the
born
most
in
trusted
bondage,
advisors, bro. Yeah.
born in bondage, right? Fought off the quote unquote slave buck breaker, right?
Hmm.
Traveled to Europe, came back to America, and rose to
Hmm.
be one of the greatest orators in the history of America.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Great man. And then when I Googled him, the damn boy had a nose look just like Frederick Douglass. I said, "You might be a great grandson of Frederick Douglass." You
Get
know,
out my
look at that
face.
nose. But yeah, that's the power of narrative, bro. That's the power of narratives and stories. That's why what you're doing on this podcast is so important, my brother,
Appreciate
for
it.
it to go on the annals of history. This is Second Chance Month, brother. And I'm encouraged when I see more and more Antoine Rivers and Anthony Browns and Tad Vassals. I'm encouraged, brother. Why?
Yeah.
Because we are the germination and the manifestation of those brothers on the inside that was pouring into us, right? Some of those brothers are still in there. You know that, Antoine, right? Some
Yeah.
of those brothers are still behind those walls, but what they poured into us, right, is benefiting the community, right? What I'm doing right now as the executive director of Georgia Jail Action Committee, I have transitioned from Black Male Initiative. So, as the executive director of Georgia Jail Action Committee, I'm committed to 3 things: recidivism reduction, restorative justice, and eventually prison prevention, right?
Mm.
We want to bend and blend this rigid, traditional criminal justice system with restorative practices, right? We understand that we're not going to abolish it, but if more and more men like yourself, myself, and all the brothers that I'm in coalition with, we're being vocal about our true transformation, that transformation is possible. We want to start taking these messages back inside the walls, start putting programs in there with
Right.
real with brothers that want to go in there and make the change, brother. And
Yeah.
I'm encouraged, man. I'm excited, my brother. I'm excited about what
Man.
we're doing. I'm excited about what you're doing. And once again, I
Yeah.
just appreciate you for having me up here, brother.
Man, bro, like with whatever initiatives y'all got, man, meetings or whatever program, man, please let me know, bro. I want to see
Yes,
what's
sir.
going on, bro. I like to contribute in some type of way. Now that's why reclaiming the narrative matters, bro.
That's why
Because
I'm
you
here.
can change it, bro. Like my thing of it is getting out is the easy part for some of us, right? The hard part when you out here, you got to start all the way over, bro. You got this on your back and they gonna be looking at you. Might not get a job immediately, might not get housing, might not have no one to rely on that is on the straight and narrow like what we had while we were in there. So yeah, storytelling and authorship over your own life, bro. That's
Authorship over
when
your own life.
a man stops being trapped inside the story told about him. Now,
Amen.
hey, when I'm gonna close it here, bro. I ain't gonna hold you today.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for the man still inside, for the ones just coming home, for the one carrying shame, regret, fear, and that weight of every bad decision, because it's all about decisions. What would you tell the man who still believes his worst decision is his final definition? What would you tell them
I would
if they
tell
believe they
I would
still?
remind I would remind that person that before the handcuffs, before the numbers, before the uniforms, before that life that we know of incarceration, we were all human beings.
Hmm,
We were all
amen.
human beings. Let's
Yeah,
not lose or let's not forfeit our humanity, right? We're human beings. We all, have the ability to choose a God of our understanding. We all have the ability to choose a God of our understanding, and that's a great start. That's a great start with a God of your understanding, right?
Yeah.
And
I
once
know
we
exactly what that means. Your
and once
understanding.
we get
Mhm.
into it with a spiritual relationship, because we got to have a spirit. I have to have a spiritual relationship. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not, but I have a spiritual relationship, and I understand that things sometimes it's not logical, it's not psychological, it's spiritual. I just walked a brother in the Fulton County Jail to turn himself in Tuesday. Monday, as a matter of fact, Monday, because we did it first thing Monday morning. Said, have your weekend. Don't worry about turning yourself in because it's no court, nothing, right? But Monday morning, you're gonna turn yourself in, brother, because you have an active warrant. And we have to handle that, right? We have to handle that. But he's been looking for a job, and I know he's been looking for a job. I know I've been helping him look for a job, Antoine. Unfortunately, he was convicted of a sex offense, and so a lot of discrimination comes his way.
Yeah.
So turning himself in on Monday morning, guess what we run into? We run into a Miss Carolyn Smith of First Step Staffing. She's in the Fulton County Jail, arranges or releases somebody while we're turning him in, and she says, we will be glad to hire you. The moment you get out, we got your job. As a matter of fact, take my car. Brother, this is happening in the
Oh
jail,
man,
brother. This is how
bro.
I give a testament to it has a God of your understanding, right? Because I didn't
Yeah,
plan it. I just
that's
told the
crazy.
brother, let's be accountable, right? Let's
Damn,
not,
bro.
we can't keep ducking and dodging it. And yeah, I had the warrant since October,
Yeah.
right? It's over with. Let's handle this now so we can handle business, brother.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Nobody
That's
wants to go back.
crazy.
But he put his big boy pants on, turned himself into the jail, right? And lo and behold, there go a job. What he's
Right
been
there,
looking
man.
for.
Man, amazing, bro.
I
That's
can't
an
help but say
amazing story,
amen.
bro.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love, and it overjoys me to tell you that story. Right? No cameras was around. Nobody documented it, but it happened.
Right.
Right? That's the impact. That's being just as impactful. Right?
Mhm.
We all have been impacted by the criminal justice system. We understand that, but now it's time for us to be as impactful. That's what you're doing, my brother. That's what we're doing. Right?
Yeah.
That that's
That's
it in a
what's up,
nutshell.
man. That's an amazing story, bro. Like, I hope that young man like follows up on that, man, because I know you're gonna hold him accountable. I
For
know you
sure.
will hold him accountable.
For
So
sure.
let him go on it. But that's a lot of times this is what you got to do. Just go and face the music, man. Man,
That's what
Anthony,
we got.
man. First and foremost, man, I want to just thank you for your time, your honesty, and your
Thank you.
insight. I mean, just showing up with the kind of truth that this conversation requires, bro. You didn't give us the polished version. You gave us the real version, the version with
Yeah.
weight on it,
Yeah.
version with scars, man. Like that's what happens, right? So, um, you gave all of that today, in this conversation, and I appreciate your transparency again, your perspective on everything, and more than that, I appreciate the fact that your life is not just a story about what you survived but what you decided to build afterward. That's where that whole storyline with the questioning came from. Like, where were you before? What happened then? And what you doing now? You know what I'm saying? That matters, bro. But before we close this out, let me ask you one final question. What's next for Anthony Brown?
Like I said, I'm an executive director of Georgia Jail Action Committee. I would love for everybody to follow us. We at Georgia Jail Action on Instagram, and you can find us on we got a website as well. I want to start bringing some restorative programs. Georgia carceral system is so chaotic. Anybody, if you scroll through social media, if you watch the news every other day, right, it's some utter chaos coming out the system. Whether it's people that's losing their lives violently due to neglect, right? You have some of these prison systems, some of these prisons that's 20 and 30% staffed. Who's
Yeah,
running the jail? Who's running that is a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe, and we're seeing the disaster, right? We're seeing the
yeah,
disaster get cooked up. We see it in Fulton County Jail, in a city that's 44% black. The county jail is 89 to 90% black. In
terrible.
2003, Donald Trump was able to walk in 20 minutes. It was 3,000 people sitting in that jail, sir. So what's next for me is to start bringing some accountability to our policymakers and to our criminal justice stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough for us to have these conversations in our silos so we can say amen and amen. No, what are some real exit ramps from that jail, right? There's a program called the Ladders Program between the Solicitor General's office and Atlanta Technical College for offenders that's under the age of 24 with certain offenses. They qualify to go from Rice Street to ATC. We need to be inside the jail. We need to start getting accountability. Who's in there? We need to start identifying these people. And we want to start identifying the judges that's prolonging these cases because these judges are elected officials. These judges are elected officials. We can start looking at that. We can start putting pressure on them. See these cases. It's not about a hug a thug campaign. It's about justice. It's about constitutionality. And it's about holding our criminal justice stakeholders accountable like they hold us accountable. That's what's next for me. We're increasing up the accountability, and we want to make sure this work is impacting people's lives in a positive manner. And when we start talking about prison prevention, we talk about emotional regulation now. We talk about men, what is really a man is being able to identify his emotions, not act on his emotions. I can identify, Antoine, that I'm mad as hell, that I'm angry, that I'm frustrated, that I'm irate. I don't gotta go grab no guns and shoot up no blocks and doing stuff. That's not man shit. That's not even gangster shit. Right? We're going to start having those conversations as well. So it's not just on the back end of the criminal justice system. We want to get on the front end of the criminal justice system and start playing the tape forward for some of these young brothers, right? Because just in Brooklyn, New York, you got an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old out here in a wild shootout, and a 7-month gets unalived, brother. And a 7-month-old loses their innocent life. That's not man shit. That's not gangster shit. Right? So unfortunately, they're gonna have to go through the system, right? To learn what they learn. So I want to really start getting on the front end, right? That's what's next for me. Getting on the front end and getting into the prison prevention work, the public safety work, the community work, building these communities up. That's what's next.
I'm a friend, man, and I definitely need you to come out with me to Next Level Boys Academy. You ever heard of that? Next Level Boys Academy?
Heck yeah, hell yeah. I love that work that brother's doing. What's his name? The brother who runs it, I contacted him one time. He's doing excellent work.
Yeah, he's right up there in Union City. They normally have classes up there once every 2 weeks. But it's basically about prevention. Basically, it's more so of an intervention program. Some of them boys in there, 18, 24, facing more time than we could probably ever count, right? But with the intervention program, one of the judges, or a couple of judges that's down in Fulton County, he actually has diversion wherein instead of sentencing them, he actually sends them to his program, right? And they go through workshops. He have a lot of different people over there with him, man. But yeah, definitely I want you to get down. I'm gonna send you the contact. We'll connect and we'll just show up one day. But definitely they doing some good work over there, man. I mean, that's why we do it, man. We want to make it's bigger than a podcast, bigger than content, it's bigger than just a conversation. It's narrative repair, and it's also community restoration. And this is what it's supposed to look like. So again, bro, I want to thank you again, man. We changing the narrative every single day that we breathe and live this work. I want you to stick on really quick, because just to follow up, just like in the little green room, gonna kick it. But for all the people that's out there, man, we are talking about the hurt nobody posts, man. The grief nobody like budgets for. The emotional that trauma, bro, like for real, it's real trauma. Like starting with our childhoods up until the time when we decided to make a change for ourselves, right? That's the work. So with that being said, man, we're going to keep doing it right. We need your help. Please, we need better equipment. We need stronger production. We need tools to take this platform deeper. We need connections. to get this into our communities and conversations that are often hidden from people. We need to get it in public view.
That's right.
Because these stories deserve more than a microphone and some good intentions. We need to care, quality, and we need to be documented properly so that it can. So if this conversation moved anyone out there, support the mission, visit our website, visit my website with Anthony Brown. I have those in my socials. Buy a book, buy a shirt, support the platform because every purchase helps us keep this work moving. There it is. There it is. Buy a book. I gotta give my book to you from you too, bro. The other one, the last hardback, bro. No, not that one. The other one. Right? Tell me where I get it from. Where can I pick that up at, man? It's on like Amazon.
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon, or people can hit me directly on my social media at The Real Anthony J-A-I, just like this, Anthony J-A-I Brown.
I see what you did with that. Just like, all right.
And I'm gonna tell you, I'll be honest, bro. That was inadvertently, bro. That was by design, brother. Because that's my middle name, though, Jay. Yeah,
that's what's up, man. Hey, so everyone, look for more episodes of the Conviction Fiction podcast. Hey, we got to have you on again at some point.
Sure,
definitely in the future, man. Well, thank you for joining the Conviction Fiction. And stick around real quick.
All right, my brother.